The sun had already dipped behind the trees when he turned off the highway. "We're almost there," Nate said, his hands tight on the wheel. I glanced out the window. Gravel crunched beneath us as we followed a narrow road lined with old oaks. Spanish moss hung low, brushing the top of the car as if nature itself wanted us to slow down. He hadn't told me much about this place, just that it was where his parents were buried. We'd never visited before. Not once in the years we'd been married. "I want you to see it," he said earlier that morning, almost too casually. Then he added, "It's important to me." There was something strange in his tone. Like guilt dressed up as sentiment. But I didn't ask questions. I never really did. Not with him. We reached a rusted black gate. The sign read St. Briar Hill Cemetery in chipped gold letters. Nate stepped out first. I followed, feeling the air change as soon as my shoes hit the ground. Heavy. Still. "This way," he said, not looking back. We walked past rows of crooked stones and sun-faded flowers. I kept pace, my eyes scanning names I didn't recognize. And then he stopped. 2 headstones. Side by side. Miriam Lockhart, 1956 to 2010. Gregory Lockhart, 1954 to 2010. His mother and father. He crouched down and traced the letters with his fingers like he was reading them for the first time. "I was out of the country when they died," he said quietly. "Didn't make it back in time." I nodded, unsure what to say. I'd never seen him like this. Soft around the edges, vulnerable. He stayed like that for a while. Silent. Unmoving. I stood back, giving him space, watching the trees shift in the wind. Something about the silence felt rehearsed. When we finally got back in the car, he didn't start the engine right away. "I'm glad you came," he said. And I just nodded again. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. But something about that graveyard stuck with me. Something about how he looked at those stones. As if he wasn't mourning, but waiting. It had been 4 days since the visit to the cemetery, and Nate hadn't mentioned it again. He returned to his usual routines. Up early, coffee black, minimal conversation. But something about him had shifted. At night, he tossed and turned more than usual. Once, I woke up to find him sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at the wall in the dark. He didn't notice me watching. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. I tried to brush it off. Told myself it was grief. Delayed grief. But the thing was, he never really talked about them. No stories. No memories. No photos. Just 2 names on a stone in a place I'd never heard of. And now, suddenly, he wanted me to see it. That Sunday, I opened the laundry cabinet to reach for detergent, and a folded piece of paper fluttered down from the top shelf. I hadn't seen it before. No envelope. No stamp. Just handwriting I didn't recognize. It read, "Nathaniel, I heard you came. We weren't expecting that. We're still keeping our word. But remember what we agreed, no contact, no visits. You have your life now. Leave this one alone. M." I stared at it for a long time. M. Miriam? My hands started to shake. I wasn't sure if it was from the name, or from the fact that the paper looked fresh. No yellowing, no dust. Folded clean. I tucked it back where I found it, quietly, carefully. That night, I waited for Nate to fall asleep before slipping out of bed. I crept downstairs, opened the laptop he rarely used, and typed in Gregory and Miriam Lockhart obituary. Nothing. No record. No funeral notices. No archived memorials. It was like they'd never existed. Or like they were never meant to be found. I told myself not to spiral. Maybe they'd lived somewhere rural. Maybe no one published anything. Maybe. The door creaked. I snapped the laptop shut. Nate stood in the doorway in silence. He didn't ask what I was doing. He just looked at me then said, "Come to bed." And I did. But I didn't sleep. Later that week, Nate alone in his car, parked on the side of a remote road. His hands gripped the steering wheel. A shadowy figure walked up to the passenger side and opened the door. An older woman. Pale gray hair. Thin lips. She sat down and didn't speak for several seconds. Then, in a low voice, she said, "You weren't supposed to bring her. You lied." Nate didn't respond. She turned to him. "You're unraveling. And she's going to figure it out." He looked ahead, jaw tight. "They think you're dead," he said. "That's what you wanted." She smiled bitterly. "Dead is simple. Secrets are not." Then she got out, shut the door softly, and disappeared into the woods. Cora still didn't know. But now we did. His parents were alive. And Nate wasn't grieving. He was hiding. I started avoiding the second-floor hallway after dark. Not because anything had happened there, but because that's where Nate kept the box of old papers, documents, cards, scraps of his past. I was afraid if I opened it again, I'd find something I couldn't unsee. So instead, I cleaned. I organized the pantry, rearranged every drawer in the kitchen, scrubbed floors that didn't need scrubbing. Nate didn't question it. He never did. His days were the same. Coffee, work, silence. But now, he kissed my cheek like a ritual. Mechanical. His eyes lingered too long, as if checking whether I knew. I stopped asking about his family, about the cemetery, about the letter. Instead, I watched. I noticed he flinched when the doorbell rang, even if it was just a package. He never left his phone lying around anymore. And twice, I caught him erasing recent calls. One night, I heard him on the phone in the garage. He thought I was asleep. "I told you I handled it," he whispered. "No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's just looking at me differently." Then silence. "Don't contact me again," he said sharply. "We had a deal." The next morning, he made me pancakes. The same way he did on our second anniversary. But he burned the first batch. He never used to do that. That weekend, we went for a drive. He said he needed air. I said okay. We passed a lake I'd never noticed before. The sun was low, gold on the surface. He pulled over without warning. "Let's sit a while," he said. We didn't speak for the first few minutes. Just sat on the grass like strangers trying to be familiar. Finally, I asked, "Were you close to them? Your parents, I mean." He didn't answer right away. Then, "Not really. They weren't affectionate people." I nodded. Then quietly he added, "They made a lot of mistakes." He picked up a pebble and tossed it into the water. "Sometimes," he said, "you have to bury people while they're still breathing. Because otherwise, they never stop hurting you." I froze. He didn't look at me when he said it. And I didn't ask what he meant. But the silence between us was no longer gentle. It was filled with something sharp. That night, I lay in bed, facing away from him. His breathing was steady, calm. But mine wasn't. And in the darkness, a single question echoed in my mind. What if nothing he told me was true? The package came mid-morning. No knock. No doorbell. Just a box left on the porch like it had always belonged there. Brown paper. No label. No return address. I stared at it for nearly an hour before bringing it inside. Nate wasn't home. He was working late again. The phrase had started to mean less and less. I placed the box on the kitchen counter. Cut through the tape with the same dull knife I used for opening soup cans. Inside, beneath a layer of soft fabric, was something heavy and cold. A photo album. The cover was dark green leather, the edges frayed from years of handling. It smelled like dust and memory. I opened it slowly, page by page. There were photos of a modest yellow house with white trim, a rose bush in the yard, a wind chime hanging by the porch. Then came faces, smiling ones. The woman from the woods. The man from the blurred picture Nate once kept on his phone and deleted without explanation. And Nate himself. Laughing. Holding hands with them. Looking young. Looking loved. Not a single sign of grief. Not a single sign that they were ever gone. In one photo, he stood beside the front door holding a small box wrapped in gold paper. On the back of the photo, scribbled in blue ink, Nate bringing her gift. 2019. 9 years after they were supposed to be dead. I closed the album slowly, carefully, like it might burn me. Tucked in the back cover, just like in a movie, was a single folded paper. He lied. We're not the monsters he told you about. Be careful who you protect. No name. No explanation. But I didn't need one anymore. That night, I made dinner. Roast chicken. The one he liked. He came home exactly on time. Hair slightly wet like he'd rushed through a shower somewhere else. He walked in holding daisies. My favorite. Set them down without a word and kissed the top of my head. I kissed him back. We ate in silence, the kind that presses against your ribs. I missed you today, he said. It's been a while since we had dinner like this. I nodded. It has. He smiled. That practiced, warm smile that people complimented at parties. But now, I knew. Now, I saw the corners of his mouth twitch too late. His eyes not quite meeting mine. The weight behind his sentences. After dinner, he poured me tea. Sat across from me. Are you okay? He asked. I looked at him. Really looked. And something in me clicked. This man had buried the truth so deeply, he didn't even flinch anymore. He thought he was safe. He thought I would stay quiet, because I always had. So I smiled back. A small, measured smile. One that told him nothing. Later, as I placed the daisies in a vase, I found it. A small white card, nearly hidden among the stems. No signature. No decoration. Just 5 words, written in neat cursive. Don't trust what you can't ask. My hands didn't tremble this time. They just held still. I stood in the doorway to our bedroom, watching Nate brush his teeth. He glanced up in the mirror, caught my eyes, and smiled again. I smiled back. Because that's what you do when you're building a wall behind your face. When you're preparing for the moment everything comes undone. That night, I lay in bed beside him. He slept soundly. But I didn't. And for the first time in 7 years, I didn't reach for his hand under the covers. I looked out the window. The moon was full. Quiet. Everything felt quiet. Too quiet. His parents were still alive. But he wasn't happy. And neither was I. Not because I knew the truth. But because I knew there was more. And one day, I'd find it.